Sometimes real life is stranger than fiction. This is a reality trip with Ben Fama Jr.
Everybody, thank you for joining me today. I'm Ben Fama Jr. This is Reality Trip. I want to talk about fear and anxiety, but I want to talk about it through the creative process. Some of you guys know I just released a brand new film, and I'm a creative. And oftentimes when we are creating and working on projects and we're trying to accomplish something, and this doesn't have to just be with creativity. This could be entrepreneurship. This could just be being a better parent. This could be anything that you're going on in your life. There's often a struggle that goes along with wanting to get to a goal or trying to accomplish something. And usually there's a mindset that usually stops us or gets in the way or gets us to think differently about something. And that's really what I want to explore. In fact, you guys know I've been really getting into the mindset of how we think and the way that we try to approach problems. And that's what I'm generally interested in. So I'm really excited about my next guest today because she's an extremely talented filmmaker and author. We've been friends for a little while now. We always start, our show saying, oh, well, we have differences. There's always these differences we talk about. I'm not interested in the differences today. I'm not interested in the bullshit. I'm interested in what we actually have in common and the common approaches we have. And I respect my next guest for the approach she has and the work that she actually does. So with no further ado, I want to introduce my next guest. She is a filmmaker. She's the co-director of the film What the Bleep Do We Know and many other types of films. She has the book Tipping Sacred Cows, and her brand new book that's getting ready to come out, actually has been released, is Dancing in the Unknown. So please help me welcome to the show, Betsy Chasse. Betsy, how are you doing today?
I'm in the wind, as with creative processes. You're always in the wind. So I'm metaphorically and physically showing up in the creative process with you today.
That's awesome. I love LA when it's windy and it's cooler. So is it cooling down for you guys out there?
A little bit, yeah, which is nice. I got my fall colors on, and so I'm good to go.
So one of the things that I'm trying to actually explore is trying to understand how we actually understand this process in our minds when it's coming to these hangups, these things that we have. And as creators and as filmmakers, I think one of the challenges that we actually have is actually getting the name tag to get off the screen. There we go. All right, so that's part of the process. You just got to go with it along. But so I realized when I was making this film, some of the hard challenges that I was up against and I was facing, and some of the things that my mindset that I really had to push myself to the limits into creation. I think you understand this. You've been a veteran at this. You've been doing this for a very long time. Walk me back many years ago, and I want to talk about What the Bleep Do We Know for a reason. When I was on a spiritual journey, when I was on a spiritual path, that film was something that really resonated with me. That was something that really, even to this day, was influential. And I know that we can debate stuff, but to me, it was a way for me to open and see the world. And I always just felt that when I saw documentaries that made me feel that way, that I wanted to create and do the same thing. So can you take me back to those years when you first got brought on board for the film, okay? And first off, what were some of the challenges that maybe people didn't know about, or some of the challenges that you were facing when you first got on there? What was your mindset? Were there things that you were like, holy shit, I've got to, whatever it is. What were some of your mindset and the things you're going through back then that you can kind of bring to the table?
Sure. First, I'm going to say that you're always on a spiritual path. There's no getting off of a spiritual path. I hate to break it to you, but our life is an adventure. It's a journey, and the creative process is part of that journey. Of course, I'm 17, 18 years past the bleep now, and I've had a lot of creative processes after that and a lot before that. And I sort of think of the metaphor or the visual of a caterpillar coming out of a chrysalis. If you've ever watched a butterfly come out, it's bloody and it's gross and it's violent and it's painful and it's scary. And that's sort of what it's like when you decide to do anything. I'm a mom. It's the same process. When you decide to give birth to an idea, it's, birth is not pretty. And I think people sometimes get stuck in this idea that oh, I have this brilliant idea and it's going to flow. I mean, you and I agree on this idea in the new age world that everything should happen with ease and grace. I think ease and grace is subjective. And so on the Bleep, there were lots. I mean, it's so many to even think about, from the idea of the film. When I got brought onto the Bleep, it wasn't even the Bleep. It was a totally different movie. And it was, the first big challenge was for the other filmmakers and other people in the process to realize that movie that they wanted wasn't going to work. And so that's a big, when you have an idea, when it's your idea, and then you bring other people into your collaboration, and one of the hardest things is giving up your baby enough to listen to other people's input. And there are filmmakers eventually on the Bleep, all three of us working together. And I would say that the beginning and throughout the entire process was realizing that my idea of my vision wasn't going to work and letting it go and being open for. That doesn't mean we threw out the entire movie. It doesn't mean we quit. It doesn't mean we walked away. But that moment when this isn't working, I'll tell you a great story about that. We were filming on the set one day, and one of the most famous scenes of the movie is the water crystal scenes where Marley Matlin is walking through the water crystal scene. And we were filming that for an entire day. And the more and more shots we did, the more and more it just looked like Armin Shimmerman, who was the guy who delivered the now famous line, looked like a creepy stalker. And it just was so bad. It was like we're all sitting back there and none of us were really willing, because it was such an important scene. We're like, okay, maybe if we do this, it'll work. But it was just, the whole thing was just bad and not working. And we had hired this guy to come in for like a day as a Steadicam operator. Big, huge, tall German guy named Eichen. And we're filming and I mean, this is hours, by the way. This is not like 5 minutes. We have been on this scene, this shot for like 7 hours, all sitting there, everyone on the set knowing it's not working. And then all of a sudden, this guy, Eichen, Mark and Will and I go off to the corner and we're arguing about whose idea is better to fix it. And we're just having this big battle between the three of us. And Eichen kind of walks over, and he's the new guy on the set, right? And he walks over and he's like, in his German accent, which I can't do. And he goes, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but I had an idea and I just thought I'd share it with you and see if you guys like it. And he goes, we should scrap all that other stuff that we've been shooting. And basically the whole scene, the way that you see it now, this guy Eichen designed. And he said, because we had all this dialogue and it was like weird. And he said, all Armin should say to her is, if thoughts can do that to water, imagine what thoughts can do to us. It was so simple. And we all just looked at him like dumbfounded and like totally blown away. And it was perfect. And it is now like one of the most quintessential lines in the entire film. And it didn't come from any one of us. And so that moment when you realize it ain't working and you listen to outside input and you have the space to go, wow, that's right. That to me is one of the biggest parts of the challenges of the creative process.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I do love that feeling when you think you're going on one path. You think you're like, it's like this form of control. Sometimes you're like, I need it to be this way, and it needs to be this vision, and and then it's like, okay, I need to also know when to walk away from it and say, okay, well then maybe I need to change my mind. Maybe I need to see it a different way and do so. And filmmaking, you kind of have to put yourself in that mindset to do that, because you always have this insecurity. And I don't know if this happens to you, and I'm sure it happens to a lot of us, and I imagine it happens to you, but there's this moment where you feel like, oh, this is a great idea. This is fabulous. This is a great idea. And then you get in the middle of it and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? This is going to be shit. No one's going to like it. No one's going to. So when you're in that mindset and you're gung ho, and then you realize you're in the middle of it, what pulls you through that part where you're like, okay, everyone's gonna fucking hate this. This is shit. This is crap. How do you get through that mindset?
Well, so here's the thing for me. The way I structure any project is that, and this is gonna get a little woo-woo, sorry, but it's just my way, my creative process, is that I don't take ownership of an idea. It's not mine. It's like it's an entity of its own. It's got its own life. It's got its own ideas. It's got its own agenda. I'm just sort of a conduit for the idea. The idea popped in my head and said, this idea is sort of floating around in the universe, and it says, oh, that one there, that'll do it, and pops into my head. and then I get in this, mission of like, okay, I'm going to create this idea. But what I do for myself is that I'm just a messenger. And so I then have to be able to listen to the idea. And so what that means is that I get really in tune with my gut. And so if my gut is saying, no matter how much time, I mean, listen, on the bleep, we started and stopped that movie 4 times. And one of the reasons the budget ended up getting so high was because we spent a bunch of money on crap we never used because it didn't work. We were lucky enough that we had that money. Most people don't. But, so for me, how I get through those moments is when I just step back and I get my ego and my agenda out of the way. And I go back to the project, the creative idea. And I said, well, what is it that this idea really wants to convey? And I trust that the answer is going to come either through me or through some other partner on the project, some other collaborator. And that sounds really wishy-washy and woo-woo and hard to sort of pinpoint. But I think, at least for me, I've done enough projects where I've had some that epically succeed and some that epically fail, that the fear and doubt around it doing either isn't why I embark on a creative project anymore. I just am going with what I'm feeling I want to do. And whether it is successful or not, it doesn't sit in my mindset.
And, here's a kind of interesting question that goes along with that I think a lot of creatives wonder is, do you ever know when you're in the middle of a project if it's going to be successful or not? Like, did you know that that What the Bleep was going to be a runaway success? I tend to find that a lot of times when I look at creatives, they don't know. They're just like, I went through the process, there was no way to know. Was that the same experience for you?
Yeah, I think after the bleep and after we had a few screenings, we knew it would be successful, but during the process, no.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, there's a difference between knowing and hoping.
Yeah.
So we certainly hoped it would be successful, but did we know? No, we didn't.
What do you think attributed to the success? I mean, there's tons of us that make films all the time. Some of us never get our names out there. Some of us never. What do you think attributed to the success of that film?
Yeah, I mean, people ask me that all the time because people call me all the time and say, we want to make another bleep. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I can't do that. I don't even know. I'm not even going to try because I don't want to repeat that. Because, again, I'll use my woo-woo language. Bleep was successful because it landed in a perfect moment in time. The stars aligned, so to speak. I mean, everything was in perfect timing and alignment for that movie to succeed. There'd never been another movie like that, save for maybe Mind Walk, right? There had never, it was so unique and so outside of anything that had ever been done that it was either going to go through the roof or fail miserably. I mean, that was really, there were only 2 chances. And it just happened. I wish I could say it's because I'm a filmmaking genius and I knew exactly what I was doing. And that's not the case. The case is that, the one thing I will say about Mark, Will, and I, and the other people that worked on the film, I mean, Mark, Will, and I get all the glory, but there were amazing people that worked in marketing and distribution and on the set. One of the things that I think made a big difference was that when we were making the film, I'm a very intentional person. That may be woo-woo to some people, but the truth is that I am thoughtful and conscious and intention when I'm making a project. And so I don't, I'm one of those people that interviews the PAs, and says, well, who's working on my movie? Because I firmly believe that energy and frequency and intention make a difference. And so everybody that worked on that movie really believed in it and really wanted it to succeed. And so with everything that they did, that was what was behind it. The costume people, the makeup people, the grips, the electricians. Eichen, Eichen didn't have to, he didn't care. He was going to get his paycheck whether we got that shot or not, right? Who the heck is he? Why does it matter, But there was an intentionality. There's a big plane going to go over me. Sorry.
No worries.
That I think is as a leader of a film. I mean, when you go embark and become the director or producer of the film, you're a leader. You're a leader. And for me, that meant making sure that everybody involved had the same intention. And so I do believe, if I look back, that was probably a big reason why it was successful. But I think also it was just a perfect moment.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point when it comes to your team, and it's one thing I wanted to bring up is a lot of times I study, thought leaders and successful people. One of the things they say, not only with mindset, is surrounding yourself by a good team and that focus, because that's what you were talking about, and being able to have this. I said this on the podcast last week about how thoughts screw up our mind, but I think when you have an overall philosophy of this overall achieving goal and everybody starts to focus on that and your team is on board with that, it's not that it's easy and it's not that it's pretty, but people are willing to push through those limitations, you know what I'm saying? And having a good team to do that. What are your thoughts on that?
That's exactly right. I mean, that's why, I have a small team now. And I just released, started last Tuesday, a new 10-part web series called Radical Dating. And we shot for about 4 months together with a pretty small group of people. For a series, it was a pretty small team. But again, everybody on that set, I intentionally put there. Nobody came into it was a very emotional space. We follow 5 singles as they, really peel back the onion on themselves and looking into their own personal lives and why they don't have the relationships they want. And it's very vulnerable. So, you have, especially when you're making documentaries, you don't have actors, you have real people. They're going to sit there and, expose some of their deepest, darkest secrets. You can't have a crew guy who's sitting around scrolling on his phone or, messing around and not paying. You have to have people that care deeply. And so I'm really intentional about that. And I think it's a matter of, I think it's probably the most important thing as a leader and a filmmaker that you can create for yourself is having people on your team. The other part of it is having people on your team who are not afraid to go, Betsy, this isn't working, or this doesn't look good, or I don't like that. Like my DP that I work with a lot, he gets cranky and frustrated with me because he wants to do something a certain way and I want it to be this way. Now I could be a jerk and say, no, it has to be my way, but if I don't give him the space to shine and create the way he needs to create, then he's just going to shut down and set the camera and go, okay, whatever, And so that to me is like the key to success of a film. Again, I go back to this idea of I don't embark on a creative endeavor with the idea that it's going to make me money, it's going to make me successful, or it's going to make me famous. I embark on a creative idea out of sheer curiosity and then the desire to see what happens.
Yeah, and you think that that's actually what pulls you through it? Because I tend to find myself that if I'm not passionate about something, I'm more likely to quit or give it up. And I think that I feel like if I'm going to do something, it's because it has to be done. And that's what's going to carry me through all the bullshit, all the heartache. It's that sometimes for me, it's like, no matter what, I need to finish it. My biggest fear is I'm going to start something and not finish it, So I figure if I'm passionate about the subject, if I'm curious, I'm more likely to succeed to finishing it. Doesn't mean I'm always going to, or it's a guarantee, but I think it's a better outlook.
All right, I have a question for you. I'm going to interview you a little bit. Because I remember a moment, and I can't remember if this was you or Mesa. I think it was you. Having a good producer helps. You have an awesome producer, by the way. But just throwing that in. But I remember when you did that crowdfunding campaign and it didn't really succeed, and you were so pissed off and frustrated, and you were like, "Forget it, I'm not going to work." And it was funny because you were like, "I need this, and I have to have this, and I have all this," and I just kept thinking to myself, and I think I said to you or to Mesa, I was like, "Don't quit now.
Yeah,
you're almost there." So what? Because you were ready to throw it all away. I remember at least one day you were pissed and screw it. Why didn't you?
I think it's for the same thing that we're talking about because, okay, so it was one of two things actually. Just like a normal human being, I was disappointed. I felt like it was a reflection of me. Right. And I felt like, okay, maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe no one gives a shit, whatever. But there was something in the back of my head that was saying, I need to make this film anyways. Like, yes, I have my excuses. I have this old programming. I have all this shit going on like anyone else. But I've made so many mistakes in my life and letting that shitty thought process and that tape playing in my head that I realize that's a recipe for disaster that's going to make me quit. And if I don't push through it now, if I don't get my ass in gear and start focusing on it, and no matter what I need to do and I let the excuses, I'm always going to quit. And that's my biggest fear in life is going back to my old way of thinking. So that's what it was. I realized, okay, this is shitty. I realized I didn't get what I wanted. I wanted to quit, but I thought, okay, Ben, you've been here before. You have quit before. Do you want it or not? Because this is not going to ever go away in your life. This is never going to be an easy process. And so I kind of had to just kick myself in the ass, which is what I'm trying to learn. This is why I'm talking about this, because I think it's
so beautifully though. But that's the thing. I mean, we all have that voice in our head. There's, well, I don't know about you, but I have about 70 of them probably.
That's
right?
it? Come on, you need to catch up. I got like 120. What's going on?
But there's always that one that says, don't quit. And here's the thing. I have started many projects that have taken, a nosedive. And I know if I don't get that voice in the back of my head that's saying, don't quit, Betsy, then I know, guess what? This is a sign to quit. Quitting isn't a bad thing. I mean, that's the one thing that I think is really important for people to hear. Failure is not bad. Realizing that you started something and that you don't want to finish it, you don't have the same passion or love for it, and you realize it isn't what you really wanted to do in the first place, and then backing off is not a bad thing. I do that like 10 times a month. I have projects ideas that I throw out, things that I dream about, wake up in the morning and I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And then 4 days later, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do that. Get into that space that is okay. Because then if you get into the space of listening to your gut, your heart, your soul, your divine God, whatever the hell you want to call that, whatever that thing is, if you trust that, then you'll know. Because it will always show up like it did for you.
Right.
And if it doesn't show up for you, if that voice shows up and says, you know what, this isn't working the way you want it, then you trust it. You go, oh, okay, maybe I spent a bunch of money on this project. Maybe because it's like we tend to stay in things. Not just do we tend to not start things out of fear, we tend to stay in things out of fear. So we get started on a project and we've told everybody about it, we've spent lots of money about it, and then it sucks, and then we realize it sucks and we don't want to do it, but we're afraid to go, oh, I can't quit now. I'm not that way. Like, I've started projects, spent money, got investors, and realized this is not right, and said, we ain't doing this. So getting rid of that fear is really key, I think, to anybody who's going to be in this business.
Yeah, and I totally agree. There's a book I just read called Think Like a Freak. It's from the guys who wrote the Freakonomics series. And one of the last chapters, they're talking about quitting. And they said the same thing. It's like there's this myth that, oh, you can never quit. It's like, no, you need to know when to walk away from it, too. In fact, most leaders know, like most successful people know when to walk away. In fact, they know when to drop some things, quit things, and know when to focus on what they need to, and knowing when to say, okay, there's a thing called a sunk cost fallacy. It's like, I've invested all this time and all this energy, and people don't know when to walk away. And they don't just do it in this industry. They do it in their relationships. They do it in their jobs. I mean, so many people put this investment and they don't know when to say, okay, I do need to be smart enough to look away. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it does take a mindset to be able to say, because it's scary. You're like, I don't want to be a failure. But you brought up a good point that, and another thing I was trying to explore was that failure, to me, the way I've seen failure when I see people that have been successful is that failure was the thing that made them successful. It's when they fell on their asses and they learned and they said, okay, well, that didn't work, so I'm going to pick myself up. And I think fear, I know I always talk about fear, but I think fear is what stops us from doing that. We're worried about what everyone else is fucking saying and our image and whatever, but yet that mountain that you have to climb, literally the pain of going over that mountain and not being able to do it and then picking yourself back up, learning from your lesson, is what's going to get you there. The problem is we're uncomfortable and we're afraid to be uncomfortable. We don't like the pain and the anxiety of how it feels. And yet there's no shortcut. There's no fucking easy answer to it. It's like, you just got to fucking get the fuck back up on the horse and do it again and do it again and eat shit and just who is it? Guillermo del Toro. I think that's how you say his name, the director. He said the same thing. He's like, yeah, okay. He said, it's not that you never stop eating shit. You always do. It just, now you get to put a little bit more topping on it. Like it tastes a little bit better. And I think that's what it is. I think if you could just learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, you're just going to keep getting better.
Well, and I think for me, I have succeeded and failed and succeeded and failed. And so many times that I still look back when I have a failure and I go, oh, I'm still here. I'm still here. Maybe you step back for a while and you lick your wounds and you feel miserable. But, I think, again, it also goes back to the mindset of, for me, what else am I going to do? Like, I can't work at an office. Like, I would piss people off. I wouldn't listen. I would just be in a lot of trouble, right? I can't do that. And so, I was thinking today about how so life would be so much easier if I just got a job and I'd have so much more money and health insurance. And I just thought, and then I'd die. And so, I think we put a lot of weight in this society on fame and success. And so after the Bleep came out, I was cool. I was like opening for Deepak, which was random. I'm like, why am I opening for Deepak? And I kind of dug that for a while. I was like, yeah, I'm famous. But then I started to realize it really didn't mean anything. Like, in my life, it really didn't mean anything. And yeah, I'm cool. People always say, oh, you made the Bleep. Wow. And yeah, I can bring it up and get myself into some doors, and that's handy. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything to me. What means something to me is, what am I doing right now that's exciting me, that's giving me passion, that's getting me out of bed every day and pushing through the filing for grants and trying to do projects. And because to do this, you have to have, I think for me, a willingness to just let go of the definition of success, because that's what gets in your head. It's when you get in your head of, oh, I have to be successful, that's the first chance that you're not going to be successful, because it seems like opposites. If you go, I have to be this way, then you tend to do the opposite. And so I there's a great book. I'm going to mess up the name. It's called, so there's The Art of War, and there's another book called The War of Art. And I used to teach documentary filmmaking, and I made everybody read this book. And there's some great pieces in there about this, about letting go of this need that your film, your book, your painting has to be anything. It doesn't have to be anything. It's just your expression. And if you just go with that in the beginning, then all of the stuff around it, because, and my wonderful friend who lives here, her name is Ksenia, was just producing a film. And I'm actually going to give a class on this. She convinced me to give a class on the psychology of producing, because she was so excited in the beginning. And then by day 4, this group was arguing, and then this group was fighting, and this didn't happen. And I was like, yeah, welcome to the world of producing. Now, when you can stop letting any of that freak you out and deal with it, or go, oh, most of these problems are surmountable, you can get over them. And then if there isn't, you deal with it. That fear kind of goes away. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And you're training your mind to actually figure out how you're going to solve the problems in those and I think that's what causes people to fail, is when they're not able to solve the problems or deal with the challenges that have to do with it. And it is a psychology. It really is. It's the psychology of, how do I look at the way, they say all the time, perception is reality. I totally believe that's true. It's the way that you're perceiving the situation and how you're going to address it. Which I want to roll back something you just said a second ago about when you said you made it to What the Bleep, and then you felt like you had fame. I've never been famous. I'm still working on my career. And the one thing I've always studied when it comes to fame is that I always notice that there's a lot of people out there, when they become famous, it's not what they thought that it was, or that they're still not happy, or it's like that old parable about climbing the mountain to find these answers, and then on the top of it, there's nothing actually there. Jim Carrey says one of the best ways to something about being he always hopes people become rich and famous so they find out that that's not the answer. To me, it seems funny, because a lot of us that are working our asses off and trying to get to this level of, realistic or not, we're trying to attain some sort of thing, and I don't know if I'm attaining that anymore, because this is the reason why I'm asking it. What was your perception then at that time? You had a perception before of being famous, but then once you kind of hit that, what was your mindset then? Why was it not? Was it what you thought it was? Were you like, this is not? Because I always want to know why, when people make it, or when they're in a level of success, that they feel like there's still something missing, or that this isn't what they thought that it was. What was your mindset then?
Well, I think that a couple things happened. First of all, I got divorced. And so my whole bubble blew up of like money and success and all that stuff. And it wasn't just my redefining success for myself, was a whole life change, because I realized that everything that I was doing was to attain this picture that I had been programmed to think I needed to attain. And when I started to attain it, I still wasn't happy. And I still didn't have, I realized I wasn't even being real. I wasn't even being me. And so I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to perpetuate. And then on top of that, one of the other things that happens to people who have like one success, you know, I had really big success, right? Is an expectation that now everything I do has to be as successful as that.
Yeah.
And that was stressful.
Yeah.
And I finally just said, you know what? If the only thing that ever happens in my life in terms of big project, first of all, I'm lucky to ever have that one. Most people don't even have the one. But secondly, if nothing I do ever reaches that, that's okay with me.
Yeah.
Like, I had to give myself permission to be like, it's totally okay. Like, you know, the series that I'm doing right now, it's totally different than The Bleep. It was a curiosity of mine. I'm really proud of it. And I don't know if it's going to have the same kind of success as Bleep, but I know this. It will impact one person. And so for me, I've let go of this need to impact millions of people with one thing. I'd rather do a bunch of cool little things. And if one person is impacted by my book that came out or this web series that's coming out, if I help one person, awesome. And that's my definition of success now. And because I have that definition of success, I have a lot more fun with my projects. There's a lot less stress on them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true. There's stress and there's, you know, moments where it's frustrating and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I know that, you know, I'm in this to explore for myself, to learn for myself, to grow for myself, and to share that with whoever wants to listen. And if it's only one person, awesome, I'm successful.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is, you know, Mason and I talk about this all the time about how when you, like you're just talking about, I'm going to pull in maybe what you're doing with the dating thing into this too, because I wonder if there's a parallel here that maybe I'm going to connect together. That when it came to success, and what I'm hearing you saying is that there was a unrealistic expectation, and I feel like a lot of times when we have these unrealistic expectations about ourselves, about lives, we usually become depressed, we become disappointed, and reconfiguring yourself to be more grounded and being more humble, or seeing the world in a different way helps you push through it more. You're saying, it doesn't have to be this for me to be happy. Now let's get into the dating part of it, because you're obviously working on a series to do with that. Do you feel that the same parallels happen to people when they're trying to date, right? Like they have an unrealistic expectation. They let their mindset stop them. What do you see as the parallels between the dating and the filmmaking and the stuff we're talking about?
Well, it's all the same thing. It comes back down to your mindset. It comes back down to, so here's the thing. You know, we live our lives being told and experiencing a lot of stuff which create our beliefs. Your whole movie is about this, right? And we believe stuff that 95% of the shit that we believe isn't even true. And so I don't know if that's a appropriate statistic. You'd probably know better. But so what happens is then we build our whole lives around that. So, you know, here's an interesting thing. You know, when I was younger in my teens, I loved writing. And I had a teacher tell me I wasn't a very good writer. And so all of a sudden, my whole path for 15 years of my life, because I wanted to be in film, was, okay, if I can't be a creative, I'll be a technical producer. And I became a line producer for 15 years, right? And then I quit the movie business altogether, but then I come back and I get hired on The Bleep, and I've got this guy, Will Arndt, saying to me, well, why don't you write something down? And I'm like, I can't write. There's my mindset, right? Something that I was told literally probably 18 years prior is still making decisions for me. Same in relationships, same in everything. And so I started writing with him, and it went really well. And then after the film, I kind of started writing, and people liked what I was writing. And then I published my first book, and then I published my second book. And I'm like, wait a minute, I love writing. I'm a writer. For 20 years of my life, I didn't do something that I loved because I created a belief system that I wasn't good at it. Right. And we do that in everything in our life, in relationships, in creativity, in work, in everything, because that's how our brain works. I mean, you made a whole movie about this. I made a whole movie about this. At this point, I think most people get that, what they do with it. So what do you do with that? So the question is, in radical dating, the whole point of, I mean, we have 10 episodes where a big chunk of, I hate to break it to everybody, there's no like, you know, hot tub romance. There's no like fist fights between the girls. It's like not like that at all. But it's all about that. It's all about breaking down your belief system. That's what my book, Tipping Sacred Cows, about. I mean, it's interesting because People always say to me, and I'm going to kind of segue for a second, but I'll get back to it, because I do a lot of projects. And people can look at them and go, God, she's all over the place. She's doing all these different things. But for me, they all have the same message, everything, which is that what you think matters. And here's how your brain works. Here's how you can have the life that you want. And everything that I do. And so it's the same thing with radical dating. It's the same thing in Dancing in the Unknown, the book. And people just need to hear that in different ways. And so why we end up where we are, if we're frustrated with our life, is because we've been living a belief system that isn't in alignment with our true hearts and desires. And until we can first acknowledge, wait a minute, I have this gift, I have this passion, I have this love, I want to do it. And for years, I've been telling myself all sorts of reasons why I can't do it, won't do it, whatever. I'm just going to today take one baby step towards it. And the next day, another baby step towards it. And the next day, because that's going to change it for you. And then, day 4, you're going to fail epically. And you're going to go back to day 1. And then day 10, you're going to fail epically. And you might go back to day 4. But just having that trust and faith that, I've got to take the next step. I've got to take the next step in anything that you're doing. I have the same thing in parenting. One day I have a great day with my kids. You know what it's like to parent a teenager. Jesus Christ. The next day, it's like all hell's breaking loose, right? It's the same thing. It's just being able to re-ground yourself and reconnect and say, okay, I'm not going to let this setback stop me. I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to move on.
Yeah, because what's shitty is nobody ever taught us this stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, like I said in the podcast last week, I was like, you don't learn it from school. You're lucky if your parents even taught you this stuff. And I think that's what a lot of us did. We went through life not knowing how to actually deal with situations and how we perceive reality. And so we get hung up, like you said, in these past programming. And I think that's where I even feel like I'm trying to go into that direction to explore now. I feel like, to me, I've already said what I need to say about atheism and skepticism and these other things. I think there's something even deeper with belief that's more important, and it's these beliefs that I'm even more interested in. And it's the belief of success, the belief of the mindset. Why is it some of us can get the things that we want from life, right? Why is it so hard? Why do some people get it and some people don't? And I feel like, to me, I think that gets to the core of all the issues that we have in the world going on right now. Like, even after, Trump was elected and all this stuff, I stopped even posting stuff about Trump because I was angry like everybody else, and I still follow it. But to me, I started realizing, and this was in my film too, about the locus of control. Like, what do I have control of and what do I not? And I realized I don't have control over Trump and the world and people's beliefs and what they think.
I could get a nuke dropped on me at any moment today, apparently. So, because I'm in LA. Let me tell you something cool. My son, who's in 5th grade, comes home the other day, and his teacher had sent this little video that she was showing, and he was talking to me. He was doing his homework, and he said, Mom, I have to come up with other ways to communicate this sentence. And I was like, okay, well, what's the sentence? And he's like, I can't do it. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And so I started reading his homework, and I watched a little video, and it was all on growth mindset. And I was like, whoa, my 5th grader is learning about growth mindset. That is awesome. We didn't have growth mindset when we were in 5th grade. And so that's a good news. Okay. Secondly, that, most of us who are in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, we get to a place where our brain, and this, I might get this wrong, maybe you can help me remember. There was just a great study that came out about this. There's essentially 2 kinds of people: growth mindset people and fixed mindset people. Okay. So, and you can move from a fixed mindset person to a growth mindset person, but you have to be able to do it consciously. Otherwise you can't. Otherwise you're stuck. And so the people with growth mindset typically are self-reflective. They're less fear-based. They're more willing to try new things. They're more willing to step out of their box because their brain has somehow been programmed. It's resilient. It's got more resiliency. Whereas some people, they don't have that wiring in their brain for resiliency and growth. And so that's why people get really stuck. And it's being able to go, I've been fixed in this space, this belief system for too long. I'm observing that this belief system exists. It's not my fault that it came here, and now I'm going to change it.
I think sometimes the only way to come out of that, though, is to be extremely fucking uncomfortable. Like,
Oh yeah.
You know, like where and I notice this when it comes to addiction. I notice this when it comes to just like, you know, going back to the beliefs, you know, obviously making a film, I realized, well, why is it so hard to change people's minds? But the thing is, sometimes the way that people change their own minds is they have to go through enough of a process on their own and getting so uncomfortable where they hit this bottom line and they say, oh, now I'm going to grow. And for me, I don't mind being wrong. Does that make sense? Like, to me, I'd rather nobody wants to be wrong about the way they think or they believe. And Mesa said this to me the other day. She's like, well, why is it sometimes when I'm talking to you and I bring something up to you, you get all upset about it, even though I'm probably being irrational about it? I said, because I'm still a human being. Like, and for me, I have a set of beliefs myself, and I'm trying to like, it's so fucking uncomfortable to challenge even my own thinking, my own beliefs. And that's why I push myself through the uncomfortability to do it. You know what I mean? That's why it's not that I'm fearless. There's a lot of fear. It's just, I have to push. If I want to get on the other side of that mountain, I've got to crack through what I think that I want to believe about my ego, about who I am, and say, okay, you were wrong. It's all right. Get the fuck out, you know, get over it, move on from it, and learn something from it. And that's what I'm trying to do. Even with what I'm trying to do now, I'm even trying to pivot what I'm trying to even do now. Like, I'm trying to really get into the psychology of the mindset, like what we're talking about now. I'm no longer interested in, oh, well, I need to change people's minds about their beliefs, or what do people believe about this? I'm now more interested in what is the mindset that gets us to where we want, to where we feel like we're accomplishing something, to where we feel like we're breaking through these barriers, these real or imagined barriers that we have. Like, really, it's this perception prison sometimes that we put ourselves in that's no bullshit. And just cutting through the bullshit and saying, how do we look at this more objectively so we can cut through it?
I think the first thing is that, you know, for me, I don't operate from the perspective that my perspective is true. I don't, you know, I'm, you know, I have my experience, you have your experience, and it's really not for me to say your experience is right or wrong. And neither for you to tell me mine, but I'm also the kind of person that am flexible about it. Like, I don't say my truth. Like, you and I always battle on Facebook about the word truth. We used to all the time, because I realized that truth is subjective, and that's scary. It's like, we just had the alternative facts kind of thing, but it's funny because the thing is that you have a truth that's your truth. I have a truth that's my truth. A lot of people operate from the space of their truth is truth. I don't live there anymore. I get it that, I can have a belief system. I can be firm in my belief system. I can be empowered in it, but I still know that it's not yours, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Do you think the problem is a lot of times in society now that there's so many different points of views and opinions that people can't even find a commonality anymore? I think that's the problem that I just have now is like, it's okay that it really is okay that we have a difference of opinion. I mean, I know sometimes it's going to matter that we have to get closer to truth, but I feel like we've become so disconnected in becoming this groupthink mentality, this animalistic behavior, to where unless you align every one of your things with the way that I think, I can't be friends with you or I can't talk to you. And that's
how most people are, because that's safety. I mean, our brains, our species looks for community, looks for the same, looks for people that agree with them, and we like to kind of hang out in those spaces, right? You and I are friends, and I disagree with you a lot on certain things. I sit back and I go, oh, Ben, what is he? And I laugh, but I go, I love Ben. He's on his quest. He's on his journey. Look at him go. And so, again, I'm not rooted in this sense of needing you to agree with me or needing to be right. I just have my way of thinking, and sometimes it's awesome and sometimes it's dumb, and so I offer that same benefit of the doubt to other people.
Right.
And so, but that's what I think, a lot of the thing that's that we're in this space right now is that we got to this bubble because there is a lot of stuff. I firmly believe that everyone should just have health care. I believe that. I know a lot of people that don't want to pay for it because they're stuck in this money mindset. They're stuck in this whole, I look at the world, the reality that we're in, which was built up over gazillions of years of belief system. And, the monetary system is raw, weird, and we should just get rid of it. I mean, there's so many things that I look at and go, if we just got rid of like that, and that, then all of the righteousness would go away because the playing field would change. So, because I have that perspective, I don't look at things in such a hard line. And there are times, for instance, when I'm making a movie or I'm writing a book where I do have to take a hard line, but that goes back to what I said in the very beginning. If you are working with me on a project, and Will used to say this to me all the time, he used to go, Betsy, I know when it's really important because you won't let it go. And he goes, you'll bark about it for weeks and months and years if you have to. And the reason that I do that is because there's something within me that won't let it go. And I've checked in and I've made sure, okay, this is my ego. And there are most of the time I'll have an idea, I'll share it, nobody else will like it, and I'm able to step back and go, all right, fine, whatever. So it's about getting in tune with yourself, being connected enough to be able to discern the difference between what is my bullshit belief system pushing on or my ego pushing on here, and what is it that really wants to come through. And that's how I live a lot of my life. I mean, I fuck it up like every day, believe me. But the truth is that I keep coming back to that. Well, okay, 5 minutes ago, I reacted, I got upset, I behaved badly. Okay, first forgive myself, then apologize to the other person, and then check in why that is and deal with it. That's the same in every aspect of my life, in everything that I do. And that means, that's why, I'm a really happy person, even when my life is shitty and sucking for whatever particular reason in society it sucks. In my heart, I'm really happy because I've really done a lot of work over the last 10 years of my life to just let go of beliefs around success, my holding on to the idea that anything that I think is true isn't, and I'm okay with that. See, when we like to know things, this is part of what Dancing in the Unknown is about. Knowing is safe. When I'm right, I have the answers and I know what to do, I'm totally safe. And so people will fight tooth and nail, even if they're wrong, because that makes me safe.
Right.
And so I'm totally fine living in the unknown of, I have no idea. I don't even know what's going to, like, I bought lottery tickets a few days ago. After the show, I'm going to go check them. I could be a gazillionaire. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in 5 minutes. Yeah. And I'm totally okay with that. So that to me is like the biggest part of, in any aspect of your life, but you wanted to talk specifically about creativity. Be safe there. I don't know what's going to happen. We went through the whole making of The Bleep for a year and a half, and the Marley Matlin character wasn't even in the project. Like, that whole thing didn't even show up. One day I went to Will and I was like, all right, I have this crazy idea. And boom, the whole project shifted direction after like a year and a half of marching in one direction, Let's
bring up your book, actually, because you just went into it for a little bit, but I do want to talk about it because it's an interesting subject also too and it's one of the things I've been exploring a lot lately. I did bring it up a little bit in the film, but I think I haven't really told anybody. I guess I'm telling anybody for the first time. I'm already starting to kind of work on my next film. Like, I'm on the early stages, but I'm really wanting to get into the uncertainty, like that little monster in your head that says, I need certainty, I need safety, I need this. And even in the title, when you're saying Dancing in the Unknown, I think it's powerful because we want certainty so much and safety that sometimes we're looking for the comfortability to protect us from what we don't know. In fact, fear is of the unknown. It's not knowing, and being able to be okay with the uncertainty, to be okay with, I don't know, I'm just going to keep moving forward, whatever. So give me your mindset. What got you to write this book? What was your premise for it? Now that it's out, what do you want people to get from it?
So what I decided to do is I was sitting around one night and I was thinking about, it was like really close to right after the election, and I was like, God, people are just so not living their lives to their full potential. They're in the hamster wheel. They don't know how to get out. And so I certainly live in and out of the hamster wheel often. I can't say that I'm always out of the hamster wheel, but I feel like in a lot of my life I am. And so I thought, God, we have so many gurus and teachers that have been talking about this for years. It's boring. And I have some really great people in my life who have done this, who have jumped out of the hamster wheel and started to do their own thing. And so I got together with 17 other writers. And so there are 17 chapters in the book written by 17 different people, all sharing amazing stories of when they took a leap. They jumped out of the hamster wheel. They went flying, took a leap off the ledge, and they the great thing about the stories is it's not just, oh, magically I meditated and a Mercedes popped out of my ass. It's like, no, I took this leap and I fell on my face and I broke my nose and then I got back up, and these great stories of how they began to dance in the unknown. So it's written by 17 different people, and there's everything from people that had a traumatic brain injury, somebody who had stage 4 cancer, a woman who got divorced, and a woman who wanted to take herself out to dinner by herself, who had such a fear of going out by herself that she never did it, and she would end up sitting at home alone a lot. And she's like, I want it. So it's simple and amazing stories, but the whole point of the book is, I think storytelling is a great mechanism to help people shift and change. And so, just like I do with films, this book, people tell their real stories. These aren't famous people. These aren't rich people. They're all doing great things in the world to some degree, but they're just everyday people. And their stories are so beautifully written that I think anybody who reads it is going to go, wow, I'm going to do that. I want to do that. What can I do in my life right now that I can take that little baby step outside of the box? Can I put my toe outside of the box and off the line, and maybe I'll get my half of my foot out there, and then finally one day you'll just do it.
Yeah, no, totally. And if you guys don't know, you can check these all the stuff we're talking about, all the show links. I'm going to have it in the actual show links today. So if you want to check out her book, check out the films, they're going to be in the links on our YouTube page, on our website. It's all there. So make sure you please check that out. So Betsy, we're wrapping up here a little bit. And is there any final thoughts that you want to say? Any advice you want to give to people? Maybe somebody's getting ready to start a new endeavor. Maybe they're scared out of their mind. Maybe they feel like giving up. Whatever it is. What's your advice after all these years of being a creative and still going through the craziness and, like Bob Seger says, being against the wind? No metaphor to your wind, which I'm actually going to see Bob Seger next month, which is pretty awesome. But what's your life advice now with the wisdom that you have now?
So my favorite quote is by Jack Kerouac, who I love, and he says, "Be in love with your life, every minute of it." And so I just invite people to start at least once a day finding a moment that you can just be in love with, and then expand upon that and start doing the things that are meaningful to you. Start making more time. My son did the coolest thing this morning. I've been not taking really good care of myself, right? I've been so busy. I've been eating crap, and I've been not taking care of myself. And I've been thinking about doing some little self-love practices on myself. And I took myself out to lunch the other day by myself. But my son turned 10 yesterday, and I went into his room this morning and was singing to him and wiggling him to wake him up. And he held his eyes closed for a long time, and I could tell that he was awake, but he was keeping his eyes closed. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he goes, "I love myself." And then he opened his eyes, and I was like, wow, that is awesome. And I said, and he goes, Mom, this is the first day of my 10th year. I wanted to start out by saying I love myself. And I was like, dude, that is the wisest. You are a wise man. And so that, from my 10-year-old son, is the words of wisdom. Wake up every day, love yourself, have a blast during the day, no matter what is coming your way, and just remember, you know what? What else are you going to do?
Well said. If they want to find out more about you, Betsy, where can I send them?
BetsyChasse.net.
.net, not
Yes.
.com, .net.
Yes,
So.
BetsyChasse.net.
And of course, you could check out her Instagram, Twitter at Betsy Chasse. And so Betsy, thank you so much for joining me today. I always appreciate your wisdom and advice, and I'm glad that we're friends despite our differences. I think we have a lot in common, and I think that's what matters, and that's what matters to me. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Ben.
So, folks, that's our show for today. Like I said, check out the links, check out our books, check out the films, and we'll have all that there. If this is your first time on the show, please subscribe. If you're on our iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube on the rebroadcast, or Facebook, make sure you like, make sure you share, and we will be back next week with another episode. Thank you.
You've been listening to Reality Trip with Ben Fama Jr. Check out more great content by visiting benfarmerjr.com.